Good afternoon. Rich Nass, Executive Vice President with Open Systems Media and the leader of the Embedded IoT franchises, and I'm here for this week's installment of 5 Minutes With. This week, I'll be speaking with Vin D'Agostino, who is the Vice President of Marketing and of Applications Engineering for Renesas. Good afternoon, Vin.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. So for the folks who are not familiar with your history, you ran a pretty small company for a fairly long time, engineering services company. You had, 10 people employed, I'm guessing?
Yeah, anywhere from 5 to 10 for 18 years.
Okay. And now you're at a company that's slightly larger than that, right? You have
yes.
people are at Renesas in the U.S.
Well, in my organization, there's almost 100.
Okay. That certainly qualifies as larger.
Yes.
So one is very different from the other. You know, I went from big corporate America to a small company as well, and I know what it was like for me to go from one to the other. What's it been like for you to go from a small company that probably was pretty relaxed to a company that's probably not so relaxed?
Well, I have a lot of friends who also were entrepreneurs, and many either sold their company or decided to do what I did, and so the experience is very different. And I think the parts of the experience are the same for everybody who makes this move. You spend the first few months walking around saying, my God, if I ran my business like this, we wouldn't have lasted 6 months. And then you realize that if they ran their business the way you ran your smaller business, they wouldn't be around for more than 6 months. So you then settle into the fact that there is a difference and a right sizing of management style and procedures and policies and things for the organization. So while a smaller company might take more risks, there's less at risk than for a larger company, and so there are different controls and different things. So I think that everybody reaches a point as they build their business where they realize that it's no longer in their control. I've often told people that running a small or starting a small business is like raising a child. In the beginning, they can't do anything. It can't do anything on its own. You're doing everything for it, and then slowly you're helping it. And eventually, you reach a point with your kid where they come home from school or a play date and they say something, or they've had an experience that you didn't share anymore, and they are now going out on their own. And you only hope that they go into the world with the values and the morals that you taught it as it goes into the world. And the same thing happens with your business. I remember in my small business the moment that I realized that had happened, and we suddenly had to grow up and have some policies and procedures so that things that would have gone wrong that wouldn't have gone wrong if I had seen them out of the corner of my eye. Now there needs to be some way to make sure they don't go wrong. And the large companies have those in place already for many more activities than a smaller company does. So that's one of the things that you need to realize. But you also ultimately settle into the fact that the changes are more in logistics and in management, but not in leadership. Leadership has the same elements, whether it's a small volunteer group that you're working with, a small business, or even a large business. You create a vision, you communicate that vision, you build enthusiasm around it, you build respect from your team so that they will follow that vision. You train, empower, and trust your people to implement that vision. You share your experiences because typically as a leader, you got there because you had some really good experiences that are valuable for the organization. And then you give honest feedback through the whole process. And as a leader, that's what you do, whether it's 5 people working on cleaning up a park somewhere, or running a small business, or running a large part of a larger business.
Very well said. You put that really nicely, and I agree with just about everything that you said.
Thank you.
We're almost out of time, but I want to have a little fun with you, okay?
Okay.
And here's a question I ask every once in a while. If you could turn back the clock, let's go back to your senior year of college. Now, I know it's tough. It was a long time ago, so you really have to think hard.
In your neighborhood, in fact, in New Jersey.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Yeah, you were at Stevens Tech, right?
I was, yes.
Okay, and I was at NJIT. Okay.
Yes, we won't talk about that.
We will not talk about that. But Okay, so imagine you're back in your senior year of college, and you're talking to your advisor, and he says, hey, Vin, good news. You have room for one more class. You've already fulfilled your requirements, so pick any class from the whole university you want. Okay, and let's broaden the scope a little bit. Say you're at some bigger school, Ohio State, Michigan, where you could pick anything. It doesn't have to be technical, or it might be. What would you take as that last class, and why?
Well, it's funny. I think every engineer says if I could go back to college and retake a class that I took with the knowledge I have now, the practical knowledge I have now, what would it be and what would I get out of it? But in a completely different class, I think two things. I wish that back then the exchange student programs that exist for undergraduates now existed then, because I would love to have done a semester abroad somewhere. So I think that if I could go back and take any class, it would be a language class that also incorporated a lot of the culture. This world is getting smaller and smaller, and I tell my son Dominic, who's 13 now, that all the time. The world that he will experience is very different than the world that I experienced growing up, because it has gotten smaller, because it's faster to move around, it's more accepted and normal to move around, and it's cheaper to move around than when I was a kid, and it was $3,000 to go to Europe, and you didn't do that. But now it's $500 if you get the right flight, and even the colleagues that you have come from different cultures and different languages, and so to have more embedded experience in culture and language to broaden my understanding of the people that I work with or could potentially work with would be an exciting thing.
You're not taking wine tests?
I would hope that if I chose one of the Romance countries like France or in Italy, that at that age, because the drinking age was 18 then, so you could drink, that wine tasting, food, all of that would be part of the cultural experience you'd get with taking a language and learning about a culture.
You've really thought this through, haven't you?
I did, yeah.
Very good. I'm afraid we've used up our time. Thanks, Vin. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
That was Vin D'Agostino, the Vice President of Marketing and Applications Engineering for Renesas, and I'm Rich Nass with Open Systems Media. Have a great day.